You did mention, Saundra, that engaging with an executive recruiter has changed in 2023. So the chat is, how so? What's going on there?
Well, this goes a lot to systems are getting better. Back in the day when I was first started headhunting, back in the late 90s, if you had any C-level position you needed to fill, you would always call a headhunter. I mean, you kind of knew that this wasn't a job you were just going to post on the web. And we can talk about why that's not usually the first place most of the time they go. But you knew that the headhunter had access to network. And just to give you some context for comparative purposes, I used to say, yeah, we have a database of 140,000 candidates. And they'd be like, wow, that's great. That's a lot of access to network. You know, they had like maybe one or two people in the Rolodex that they could call, and then the phone number or emails have changed, right? Because that's what they did back then. And then LinkedIn came around and put everybody's Rolodex in the cloud, made it searchable. So what started happening as the average person realized that they can search for people on their own on LinkedIn, and the secret got out that executive people are rather easy to recruit because the jobs are so few and far between. Most everybody's, you know, ready to listen to an opportunity. Roles started going out to paid search at the executive level less and less and less and less. And I had already determined that I only liked working on executive roles. So I actually left my firm because my firm was remodeling their business model to focus on more lower level roles because that's where the money is. So now you fast forward, and basically most paid search now is in sort of that middle of the pyramid because that talent is very hard to find. Let me tell you, the supply and demand is in their favor. They can just raise their little pinky finger and get swooped on. Those people are hard to recruit. Now, there are still some executive recruiters out there, but they may only work on, you know, they may only fill like 5 searches a year, 3 to 5 searches a year is what I did, you know, but that's good money if you're filling them all. Well, LinkedIn offered LinkedIn Recruiter. So LinkedIn Recruiter in the beginning was thought to be like, wow, you're going to spend $10,000 to $50,000 on a software that's from LinkedIn, not software, but access to their platform. That was kind of a big deal. But now LinkedIn has 850 million members. So for the cost of a LinkedIn recruiter, an executive recruiter now has a database they can pay for, which with 850 million members, not 150,000 candidates, 850 million. So a recruiter has search at their fingertips. And if they are actually working on an executive role, most likely now it's going to be last 4 years running, over half of the third-party searches that got filled at the C-level were filled by independent solo recruiters. So you can't count on just reaching out to a big firm and having that big firm, you know, have a load of jobs for you. You have to count on that recruiter finding you when they need you. So you don't just reach out to recruiters anymore, an actual real executive recruiter, and expect for them to have some sort of job for you. Because their attitude is, if I need you, I'll find you. So your strategy in engaging executive recruiters is to make sure that you are actually optimized to be found with the filters that LinkedIn Recruiter uses, so they're calling you. Then you have their ear, and then we can talk about how to engage that recruiter.
Are the filters the best or the only way to capture the imagination of a recruiter? The thing that troubles me about them is they're so clinical. They're not human. You know, it's just this algorithm that is spitting stuff out. Is there not, I'm a little biased here, a way to expose or establish your expertise in something that might capture recruiters' attention?
Well, recruiters aren't paid for their imagination. Okay. Recruiters are paid by companies when that company has already gone out to everyone that they know. So now if a search goes out to recruiter, they've probably already reached out to 20 or 30 people on their own. And they say, okay, so we're going to pay you about $50,000 to find X person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for a fee like that, having imagination is not what's going to get you the fee. What is going to get you the fee is to find that person. And given all the filters, and this is what I was trying to illustrate earlier, given all the access to filters, they can find that person. So from a recruiter standpoint, the reason I didn't like doing it anymore is because I was basically chasing the same few people everybody else was after.
Right.
And the question became, if a recruiter, and I don't mean to say recruiters are not creative, because recruiters can be really creative, but they're going to get creative on how to recruit that person, because that's what they're getting paid for. They're without going on a really random analogy, but there was the show that I loved called Silicon Valley. And one of their software engineers said, you know what? I'm done with this. I quit. And he's like, what are you going to do? He's like, I'm going to change my LinkedIn status. And he hit the button and there's a knock at the door. And he opens the door and it's a recruiter with a limo and flowers. Okay. So I'm not saying that that recruiters are not imaginative, but they're getting paid to go find that certain person. Now, one thing that I figured out when I was recruiting is that my client, when we were working on an executive level role, was really least likely to understand which skills and experiences were really necessary. Because when I was working on mid-management roles, they could be very clear about which skills and experience were necessary. And I could even get creative. And I could say, hey, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And I could make a case for it, because after all, they're kind of looking for raw things. Where are they going to be 10 years from 5 years from now? Where are they going to, what is their go-getter attitude? What's their work ethic? At the executive level, they're making an investment and they're looking for an immediate return. So when I started working on executive level positions, what I noticed is that, first of all, there's multiple stakeholders. There's not one decision maker. And these people are like board members, advisors, investors, and, depending on the size of the company. But they all don't do what that C-level person does. Because if they did, they wouldn't need that person to begin with. So what the experiences that they told me were all over the board. And the person they hired rarely had any of this experience they wanted in the first place. Anyway, a lot of times when they ended up not hiring through me, when they weren't paying a fee. So my version of getting creative was asking them, what are you trying to make happen? And they would say, well, this is where we need the company to be in a year. So we need somebody that's going to take the company from this to this. And then when I'd go source people, I'd source people based on how they sold themselves. Meaning, if they sold themselves with their years of experience and their track record, they're not going to cut the competition. But if they sold themselves with a value proposition, meaning this is the problem I solve, and I can make the case as to how I uniquely solve it and how I'm going to get them through it, I'm going to put that person in front of my client because that person's going to close the deal. And when I saw that happening, I realized this is something anyone can do. Now, the headhunter is most likely not going to take that. They're not going to do that. But if you do get the headhunter on the phone, if they are attracted to you, because you're not going to get a conversation with them unless they call you most of the time, unless, of course, they just want to talk to you so they can find out if they can fill positions for your next level down role, or who for their next level down position that they need to fill. What the recruiter what you can do with the recruiter is you can brand with them when you do get them on the phone, and you can explain to them, this is the problem I solve, and here I solve that. Going over your skills and experience will just put you in the never ending, probably never hear from them. They can see your experience. They know that. But if you can brand with them, then you will actually have an opportunity for them to trigger for the next opportunity when someone comes around and says, look, we really need to take this product to the next level, and we need to figure out new channels to do it. Boom, now they've thought of you for the right reason, and now they can use their creativity with leverage for the client, and not meaning the client has already given them that criteria. I hope that wasn't too convoluted. Sorry.
No, I'm following. I hope our audience is. I believe they are based on the chats I'm getting.